Today it's all about how to be a great leader. Whether you're leading a team at work, running a project, or even amongst a group of friends, the leadership principles don't change. Before we get started, it's important to understand that leadership is not about a title. It's about actions and examples. It's about inspiring others to achieve their greatest potential. So let's explore some practical tips to be a great leader. The foundation of great leadership starts with self-awareness, understanding your strengths, weaknesses, values and goals. This knowledge really helps you make better decisions, but more importantly, it helps you lead with authenticity. What does that actually mean? It's all about understanding yourself. What do you do well? Are you warm and good at making other people feel comfortable? Or perhaps you need to work more on your ability to engage others in conversation. What are your values? Is honesty and integrity something that you value? I don't know that I've had a leader that I admired or respected that wasn't honest and trustworthy. For me, that's a bit of a deal breaker. Perhaps there are things for you that you hold in really high value and you want to emulate yourself as a leader. Communication is key in any leadership role, but it's not just about talking. It's about actively listening. It's about putting that effort in to understand the perspective of others and really encouraging open dialogue, as well as the ability to be clear in your own communication. Remember, a great leader ensures that everyone is on the same page, so they all have the same understanding. I won't deny that this doesn't take work and practice. It can be really easy to forget that while you're involved in a lot of conversations, and as a leader, you probably attend a lot of meetings that your team aren't necessarily privy to. So you might have the big picture in your head and understand it really well, but because they're not involved in all those conversations, it might be completely unclear to them. So how do you communicate these messages to your team without oversharing? Because let's face it, if you're in a situation where you're involved in cutbacks or budget cuts or hiring freezes, those kind of words and terminology can really freak people out. And that isn't the kind of sharing that you need to be doing with your team. So how do you manage this language with your team? How do you keep them calm if budget cuts are discussed openly? And make sure that they understand what's going on without feeling really overtly anxious. Being a leader requires you to allow space, to listen to your team so you know what they're anxious about. Communication is two ways, but you'll often find as a leader that it can be more heavily one way than another at different points in time. So there will be times in leadership where you are having to listen a lot more. Perhaps there's a little bit more disruption happening and you really need to get an understanding from your team of how they're feeling about it and what's going on with them. So sometimes your team know what's happening, so you've communicated really well with them and they have a good understanding, and they don't actually need you to be talking more. They need you to be listening more and being more of a sounding board for them. Other times they don't need you to listen to them. They need to understand what the heck's going on and get some clarity from you. Balancing that out in terms of your team and how you communicate with them is really important and is an essential part of being a great leader. As a leader, your actions will speak a lot louder than words. You'll need to demonstrate those values and ethic that you expect from your team in your own behaviour. Whether it's arriving early, staying late, or going above and beyond, leading by example sets a positive tone for your team to follow. This is all part of being a great leader. If I rock into work each day at lunchtime with no explanation of why I've arrived at lunchtime, and just casually making up my own hours, what will that teach my team? No doubt, while the cat's away, the mice will play, and that tone is already set. Considering how your actions and behaviour show your team how to act and behave is really important. And I've done a video on everyone is watching in leadership, which I'll link on the screen as well. I've been a leader for over 17 years and have built my career into leading leaders. And I've learned a few lessons around behaviour and the importance of leading by example. I learned early on that you can't treat your team like colleagues or friends, and that it's really important to set clear boundaries. It is a transition when you first go into leadership to do this. But if you start treating your team like your friends or like your colleagues, it's a hard practice to get into when you first go into leadership. But if you start treating your team like friends and share confidences with them as you would a colleague or a friend, it becomes a bit of a struggle when you go to have hard conversations. They may feel like you're betraying them if you're pulling them up on behaviour one day, but the day before you were out at lunch complaining about some other thing in the organisation, as though you were a team, as though you were close colleagues. So be careful to establish clear boundaries in the relationships with your team. One common mistake that new leaders make that sets apart great leaders is trying to do everything themselves. Learn to delegate effectively and you'll empower your team members. This not only lightens your load, but allows others to develop skills and really take control and ownership over their own work. Being a leader is being able to support your team, but not take on all the issues. I found when I started in a role in a particular organisation that there was a practice there of being presented with all the issues as a leader and being expected to solve them. I had to work really hard to shift that practice and really turn that behaviour around, which required me to be asking questions such as, oh, that's an interesting problem. What do you think the best solution is? Or do you want to have a think about what you think you could do to help overcome that and come back to me? Being a leader doesn't mean that everyone gets to line up and dump all their problems on you to come up with solutions. And being a great leader means that you'll actually empower your team when they do this to help them come up with the solutions themselves. And often those closest to the work have those solutions anyway. Now, as we all know, the world is constantly changing, and so are the challenges that you'll face as a leader. We only have to look at how fast AI is evolving to know that change is always coming. A great leader is someone who can navigate through this kind of uncertainty and be open to those new things that are coming through. It's also about learning from mistakes, because with rapid change always comes mistakes. You can't help but not know the right way to do things and have to try things out. And in doing so, it'll help inspire your team to embrace change too. I don't need to preach on the pace of change, because we all know that this world, technology, and how we work is changing really rapidly. But as a leader, I know that I'm called upon to create a sense of calm and jolly people along a little bit too in these times. Whether it's processes, changing staff, changing how we work, things evolve, and being willing to embrace it and take it on is part of showing the way as a great leader. Building strong relationships is also crucial in leadership. Fostering a positive and collaborative environment with your team is really essential. But how do you do that? In my experience, it's about getting to know your team members personally and professionally without blurring those boundaries. Just being a kind person who they feel that they can approach with problems or share things with that can help them. You don't need to blur those professional boundaries to get to know your team. Just be a kind person who is approachable, and your team will respond to that. Ask them how they are. Check in with those that seem quieter than normal. We all have our own lives, and we all have things that can impact us in our work life. We can't just leave it at the door and keep going. So it's important to be really mindful of this and encourage engagement, because a happy, connected team is a productive team in most cases. And if you can create a happy, engaged, and productive team, then you are definitely a great leader. As always, feel free to share your comments below, and thanks for watching.